Well, hello, everyone. I'm Caitlin Moore. I am the retirement educator from Union Bank and Trust here in Lincoln, Nebraska, and we are continuing our series on Road to Retirement. And today we are talking more to the folks that are in early planning stages of their retirement. So maybe 20-something-year-olds, early 30s. We're really talking about the early years of retirement. Do want to start off by saying I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just an educator. So when it comes to the education I do, I'm not telling you what to do. I cannot give you advice. I'm just here to educate you on some financial resources. So let's get started. So we're really just going to go over 20-something-year-olds, early retirement planning in early stages. I've got some great resources throughout the presentation, but definitely refer back to our first presentation on Road to Retirement. We really talk basics, which help go into this presentation. We are going to just go over some terms here that we went in with the first basic presentation, but just for a little overview here, because the language is in this presentation here. So just some terms that we talk about: Roth accounts versus pre-tax. It's simply how money's coming out of your check and into your retirement plan. Pre-tax being before taxes are taken out, you'll pay those taxes in retirement. Roth being the opposite, where money's coming out of your check now, taxed, which you will not have to pay taxes in retirement. Roth, we really want to highlight this for the early years because the perk of a Roth, not only are your taxes already paid for by the time you get to retirement, but all of your investment earnings are also tax-free. It's a little IRS trade-off. So the earlier the better, because the idea of a retirement plan is you're investing and you're earning money off those investments, and we're going to put it right back in the pool of your investments, and then that grows your pool a little bit wider and wider. So the more time you have to do that, the more tax-free interest you are earning off of your investments. Investment return, that's really just what are you earning over a certain amount of time, or essentially losing, not necessarily losing your overall balance, but the cost of the investment can go up and down with the market. It's very normal. Bear markets, bull markets, we see returns and losses during that time. Your target retirement fund, this is really just focusing in on your age, an age-related retirement fund. We have those in your retirement account here at CREAT. They're called target date funds. They have a year assigned to those portfolios, and those are the years closest to when you would turn 65. So if you're not into the investment piece of the puzzle, if it's not something you really want to pursue, you do have an option, which are target date funds, that essentially you're just handing your money over to Vanguard. They're going to invest it for you according to your age. The younger you are, the more aggressive you are in the stock market. The older you get towards retirement, the less you have money in the stock market as a whole. Longevity risk, the degree into which increasing life expectancy impacts your dollars. So as we get older, especially when we're talking about 20s, early 30s, life expectancy could get longer statistically, and so planning ahead for that is really important. And then retirement savings checkpoints. I'm actually just going to skip this because we're going to go right into that when we hit the slide here. So let's talk about early years, 20s, really just identifying these young folks that are coming into maybe their early careers, the first career that they have after school, and all the expenses that come along with that time period. So on average, this goes for everyone, but on average, you may spend 20 to 30 years in retirement, hopefully the longer end of that in retirement. So saving for that could be a little daunting, especially in early years. But our nice little formula is saving 12 to 15% annually right now, because statistically you will use about 80% of how much you already use for your lifestyle in retirement. So 80% of that carries over. So the best way to plan for that is to be saving 12 to 15%. That could include your contribution into your retirement plan. It can include a company match, and then also profit sharing, which you have all three of those sources of money here at CREAT. So the good news, among 20-somethings, when a 401k, a company retirement plan, is offered, statistically, 71% or more are actually utilizing it, which is great. The younger, the better, but it's also a very expensive time in life. So sometimes it is very difficult to be using those employer accounts to save for retirement. But right now, the median savings percent is around 8%, which is fantastic. If our goal is to be saving between 12 and 15% over time, even getting halfway there is great for the average 22-year-old right now. So that's a very high number than what we see a lot of times. So that's a great start. And then our 20-something-year-olds are starting to save more than a decade earlier. So baby boomers, Gen Xers, they're actually saving a lot more towards retirement. And that can kind of, we can talk about those millennials, the ones that are, really in their early 30s at this point. So great job to the 20-something-year-olds, the younger folks out there really planning ahead for retirement. When we're saving for 40 years from now, it can be, like I said, very daunting to think that I'm not going to be able to touch this money for 40 years. But the payoff is all of that money is being invested and hopefully growing over time. So those of you who are in your 20s, this is a nice little graph of how much you would really need to start saving. This goes for anybody, but if we look at kind of the average salary up there at the top, we got 40, 60, 80, 100,000. And then if you're in a certain age range, how much really should you be saving towards retirement for adequate savings once you get there? For our 25-year-olds, if you're making $80,000, I'm just kind of going in the middle of this graph here, around 10%. And again, that could be your contribution, a match, or profit sharing. So well on your way to be saving the 12 to 15%. With my job as an educator, I'm not here to really push a 401k and saving high numbers of money. My thought process behind that is save what you can when you can, especially 20-something-year-olds. It's very difficult because it's an expensive time of life. So if you can't get to that 10% right off the bat, try a smaller number and then just add to it over time. The great thing about being young in retirement savings is you do have more time to put more money away, but also you might be at the bottom of your desired salary. So as time goes on, you'll be making more money and have the possible opportunity to put more in your retirement plan. So in and around 25 years old, they say around 8 to 10% is a great amount, but start where you can. Do what you can when you can. So we get the question a lot at Union Bank and Trust about risk. When you're dealing with investments, which you are with your 401k, there's always risk behind it. The investment market is risky at all times. It doesn't matter if the market is really great or it's going down. It's still a risky factor because it does ebb and flow. It goes up and down. It's volatile. So there are some things to consider when starting your 401k and considering how much you can put into your plan. But there are many firsts for our 20-something-year-olds starting this. A 401k could be the first, but expensive time of life, I've mentioned a couple times. So this may be the first time you're jumping into the job market, having a full-time job, which is a great time to figure out your 401k contribution because maybe it's the most money you have made thus far in your career or in your time in the workforce. So budgeting in 401k contributions, this is a great time because you're going to get used to that over time. Your income may increase and your expenses may increase too. Over time, we can always hope that we're getting raises, we're moving up the ladder to make more money, and that's great. But right now, you may not be in that place, but expenses have now started accruing, whether that's paying off education or getting married, buying a home, having children. Again, we're walking into a very expensive time of life, and everybody knows that, and that's okay. So just save what you can when you can. Like I said, student loans, car payments, rent, buying a home, insurance, all these other living expenses that maybe you weren't having to be responsible for, a couple years ago or even most recently. So starting in our career, we're a lot of times people are let go by their parents and they have to start taking responsibility for their own expenses. Maybe you're past that and you're well into that part of your life where you've been paying your bills, taking on these expenses on your own, but planning for a 401k is just another one of those components that we have to be strategic about it. So just keep that in mind. A lot of firsts when we're talking about our 20-something-year-olds here. So with a lot of firsts come a lot of risk. So what's our message to that? Well, start saving. Just start saving something. Like I said, start saving what you can when you can. When it comes to retirement planning, sometimes the hardest part is starting. It's getting used to just a little bit coming out of your paycheck at any given time. But adding to that over time, you can be very strategic around what you do. So if you start with a particular percent of your wages going into your 401k account, maybe the next year you get a raise and you just put 1% in your retirement account and you take the rest of your raise home. That's a great strategic way to not break the bank. The hardest part, again, was getting used to it starting to come out of your account, but now we're just utilizing raises or bonuses, strategic times to add to our retirement savings. And over just a short period of time, you can get up to that 10, 12, 15% mark and then just kind of coast there if that's what you choose to do. Track your savings, investments, and monitor what you can. The younger you are in starting these habits, the better it's going to be later on. So it's a lot at first, but monitoring them. Have some way of recording where is your money, if it's in investment accounts, 401k, your bank account, other things that you may be doing with your money. Keep track of that and have it become a habit for you. Just like budgeting for 401ks, get used to that. And then later on, it's just second nature for you. Planning short-term and long-term goals. Long-term goals sometimes are easier than planning for short-term goals. Sometimes it's a lot easier for us to say, hey, I want to own a house in 5 years. I want to go back to school to get my master's degree in 3 years, something like that. But there are short-term goals involved. It's maybe getting a really good job, getting on a good budget, starting to save elsewhere or in the 401k, things like that. And another thing that we suggest doing is reducing or limiting your debt. Don't get into that debt. Don't start that if you're not already. But we can reduce it by paying things off. So again, putting a little in your 401k, but using excess to pay off debt, to bring down those interest rates over a long period of time. School loans is a really good example of that. If you can start pouring money onto that early, then you're not being hit with those interest rates later on. So just reduce, limit debt as much as possible. And a huge part of that is creating a budget. I'm a financial coach, huge fan of budgets. I kind of nerd out on that because I love doing those things, but not everybody does. So reach out to someone who knows how to do it to get some good resources for that and can help you out with that. But that is a great way to start off right, especially when suddenly you're earning a lot more than you ever have before in your early 20s. So we have another little chart here to just give you an idea of how much it does cost to have a 401k. A lot of people want to ask me, well, how much is this? 1%, 5% of my paycheck. I don't know because I don't know what you make, but on averages, we can look at that here. So right down the middle, if you make $50,000 and you put in 1% of your check every 2 weeks, so this chart is for every 2 weeks, which is how you're paid here at CREAT, it's only $19 to do 1%. So if you think about what we're doing with $19 over a 2-week period, it may be coffee, it may be just a hobby, something like that. So it may not break the bank to actually start that 401k. And if you can only start at 1%, by all means, start at 1%. Get used to that money coming out of your check prior to it hitting your bank account, and it'll make it easier over time to add to that. So if you're making $50,000, you want to put in 2%, it's $38. So again, it's not a lot of money in the short term, every 2 weeks, especially if you start early. Get used to it right away. There are some sacrifices that we can make. I like to show this chart because it really puts into perspective how much we're spending on frivolous things that maybe we don't have to have in a budget. Eating is a must, but going out to coffee is not. It's a want. So a couple of small sacrifices I like to talk about is specialty coffees. This is looking at a $4 a day habit. Annual savings, should you not do that, is $1,460. So if you spent $4 a day on coffee or something else, that's $1,460 over a year. Okay. So over 30 years, if you think of your career, if you do that for the life of your career, it's $115,000 that you're spending $4 a day. So if we could even divert just a couple of those days into our 401k, how that adds up and the benefit of that, because it is being invested and growing instead of just using it. And I am guilty of the coffee addiction for myself. So if I did divert some of that money into my 401k, my pool of investments is only going to get bigger. One movie ticket per week, and we're looking at $10 a day, and I think it's a lot higher now. That's $520 a year. So over time, that's $41,000 over 30-year period. And a candy bar a day, which this is looking at $1 a day. And I believe it's gone up since then, but that's $365 in a year. And over 30 years, it's $28,000. So a significant amount of money that we spend on a regular basis. And if we just took a little piece of that puzzle, dropped it into our 401k, we probably wouldn't even know it's gone. I mentioned earlier, and I just wanted to put this up here, traditional and Roth. We talked about Roth being really beneficial for younger folks. It's beneficial for anyone, but over a life of a career, 35, 40 years, choosing Roth is a source of money. So that's how it's coming out of your paycheck. It can be very beneficial. So if we're looking at this chart, it's just comparing the two for 2023. So here at CREAT, you do have the choice of how money comes out of your paycheck. Traditionally, which is prior to taxes coming out, or Roth, which is after taxes coming out. So for example, if you make $50,000 and say you put $10,000 in your account, when you go to pay taxes next year, had you not paid taxes on it already, you will pay taxes on $40,000. So we're deferring taxes to retirement. The Roth side of things is you make $50,000, you put 10 in here, you're going to pay taxes on $50,000. But you do not have to pay taxes on that $10,000 that you put in here later on in retirement. The perk again of that Roth is that all of that money is invested. It's growing, hopefully, over time. It's earning interest, and normally that interest is taxable income when you take it out. But if you have already paid your taxes on that initial contribution, all of that is tax-free. So it can be tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of dollars over the life of your career, especially starting in your 20s. That could be tax-free dollars once you get to retirement. So big payoff there. With CREAT, you can change that. So if you're already just doing traditional or pre-tax, you can flip it over to Roth. You could also split that. You do have buckets of money, sources of money within your 401k here at CREAT. So let's say you're putting in 6%, you could do 3 and 3. So you have money that you will pay taxes on later, and then money you won't pay taxes on later. That's okay. You can change that at any time. It's not a problem. But it is really great to utilize that Roth if you're willing to pay the taxes on it now because of the tax benefit later on in retirement. So here at CREAT, in order to get online, make any changes, or even start your 401k here, we need you to get online at ubt.com/RPS. I am the educator for the plan. I've talked to several of you. I talked to probably a CREAT person at least one a day, a big plan of mine that I work with. So feel free to give me a call. Reach out if you have questions. You can call me directly. You can also call our client service team. We are all located here in Lincoln, Nebraska. Our office hours are 8 to 5. If you don't reach us during that time, leave us a voicemail. We'll get back to you the next day. But you will always reach someone here in Lincoln, Nebraska. And then specifically, they will try to connect you with me to talk about the CREAT plan and get you online if that's what you're interested in doing. So join us next time. We're going to be talking about the 30s and 40s, also an expensive time of life, but it looks a little bit different because we're midway through retirement planning. So we'll talk about that, the busy years, and how that affects our retirement planning and some suggestions for you along the way. But thank you for being with me today.